Welcome to Absa's Innovation Lab in Cape Town. Thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful sunny day on a Wednesday in Cape Town. We'll just wait a couple of moments for people to join us. For those who don't know what Work in Progress is, or we call it WIP for short, we are a workspace and an event space that facilitates collaboration and ideation among entrepreneurs, innovators and thought leaders with the objective of co-generating tech-based solutions that solve problems or improve the way we do things. If you would like to become a member of the workspace or would simply like a tour, please email us at cpt@workinprogress.co.za, or you can drop us a message on our Facebook page. As always, we'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so please in the comment section give us your name, give us a wave, and say where you're watching from, and I'll give a little shout out. Today I have a very, very special guest with me. Her name is Amanda Lobester. She is the co-founder of digital agency Pragmattica Consulting. If you have any questions for Amanda, please drop them in the comment section and we'll be reading them out a little bit later on. But let me tell you a little bit about Amanda before we start. Amanda is a thought leader for the digital advertising and publisher monetization in Africa, with a keen focus on mobile. She has spent 10 years in the digital marketing industry, working with leading brands, agencies, media companies, and ad technologies. Within 5 years of her career, she headed up the African portfolio for a Singaporean mobile ad network, was employee number 1 for 2 local pragmatic media startup companies, and played an incremental role in setting the foundations and operations of the businesses in place, assisting companies in growing their client acquisitions and revenues within the first 6 months of onboarding. Amanda runs Pragmattica Pty Limited, a digital consulting firm focused on commercial, monetization strategies and skills development for tech startups and media companies. Amanda also lectures on data and web analytics for UCT Graduate School of Business and conducts marketing workshops and collaboration with the Red and Yellow Creative School and Business for various corporate organizations. Amanda, how do you manage to fit it all in? I can hardly say it.
Caffeine is my friend. Shall I just like pushing that the free coffee at Work in Progress office space is like really, really great and useful.
Fantastic. It's so nice to have you back in the space. Just to let you know that we are open again and the members are coming back. As you can see, Amanda's actually speaking from one of our boardrooms, one of our meeting rooms. So it's lovely to have you back in the space. And yeah, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited about this one. Marketing is a past life of mine, so I think we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's so exciting. I must say it was quite surreal coming back here like yesterday for the first time. And I think like so many people have kind of got like this cabin fever starting to set in, where it's like the 4 walls that you're seeing every single day, all day long. It kind of gets a bit much. I mean, there's a huge difference between, you know, doing all these conference calls and webinars and like video calls to like keep in touch with people, but it's still not the same as when you actually come into the office and see everyone. So it was really awesome coming into the office yesterday for the first time, seeing the related. So like I wanted to hug you so badly, but I was like, hi,
I know.
Stay there.
And we're such huggers.
Yeah, it was really nice. I mean, even like sort of sitting at the lunch table. I mean, like the crazy big long dining table that you guys have in the workspace. I mean, we all sitting like 3 meters apart, but I mean, it was perfectly fine, you know. So yeah,
it still works, which is so good. And it was important for us when we sorted out the place and the COVID-19 restrictions and the regulations, which we've now adhered to. It still has that homely feeling, which was super, super important to us.
It does,
and I'm glad you feel the same. So that means we've done something right.
Definitely food for the soul is like what I like to call it. It's like actually just seeing each other again and kind of like, you know, it's a different way of how we always came to the office, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, but it's still kind of like, the most important elements of it are like, it's still there, just like being able to sort of see each other and be in the same room. It really, I think the best way I can describe it is food for the soul, especially when you under so much pressure. It definitely helps. Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
so good.
I'm glad. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. Let's get cracking. Amanda, when did Pragmattica start? And did you work for a corporate before? How did you make a transition from corporate to entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm going to try and keep that really short because I do have a tendency to like pretty easily like tell my whole life story and the whole journey in like all minute detail. But perhaps that would be something if someone wants to kind of have that conversation, like over like a cyber braai or something. But I would say the short version is, I guess, I don't know, sometimes some people can say that they've always had this entrepreneurial spirit within them, and they've kind of known it. I don't think I would classify it that way. It's just I'm very much growth focused. So I'm quite ambitious and driven. So I'm always wanting to, level up, go to that next level. And so I'm very ambitious in my career and very practical learning in my career. Mm-hmm. And I think kind of I sort of stumbled into the digital media industry as a career, and got fascinated by it, and then everything was sort of self-taught. So with every company that I worked for, I was always there just to learn as much, and a lot of it's sort of self-study and observing. And I'd say I've worked for a lot more startup companies and very agile SMEs than I have for corporates. I think I probably only worked for like 2 or 3 corporates, and I've worked for like several companies within my career. And I'd say that the short answer is I kind of felt like I hit a glass ceiling in my career. And I think the best way for me to sort of level up to that next level, to sort of be taken seriously and really be able to do some proper solid business the way I want to do business, would be to start my own business. I started early 2018. So it's been just over 2.5 years that I've been running my own business. And I'll tell you one thing, it's definitely a roller coaster ride. No doubt, it's a proper roller coaster experience.
As a general manager, I hear that a lot. Roller coaster is a sentence that a lot of entrepreneurs starting out always say.
Yeah, it's the best sort of experience. I think I kind of, like I said, when I reached a plateau in my career where I had a lot of job offers, offering me jobs in a particular position that I was very good at and very skilled and very experienced in, but I knew I can do more and I knew I can do better. And so what ended up happening, and also tying on how I stumbled into becoming a member here at WorkInProgress, was I have a very strong referral network, and someone passed on my details to a fellow entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur, and tried to offer me a job. But I converted that job offer into my first client for Pragmattica. And that member is the guys from Binu that are also members here. And that's kind of how I got in. So they were actually my first client on like 6 retainer contracts. And so for a while, I was the visitor guest member that sort of came in and sort of joined part of their team. Sort of like my runway client to help build up here. Yeah.
That's the beauty of this space, is that there's always referral companies and referral business, I should say. So the services, let's talk a little bit about that. What actually does Pragmattica do?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to sort of explain. I think I've been on this journey for like, like I said, about 2.5 to 3 years, and I'm always like sort of trying to figure it out. I think the best way for me to explain is like to kind of say how I started Pragmattica, the intention in the services that I did, and perhaps it'd be quite useful for other people that are maybe going through the same experience. So I started Pragmattica to facilitate a very niche service offering in programmatic advertising and monetization. So for those people that don't understand what that means, in
Yes,
digital
please.
advertising, most media publishing companies rely on advertising to fund their business. All right, you don't pay to go onto a website and read articles. You like, the internet's free. So whereas, people pay for magazines, they pay for books, you pay for your TV license and all that kind of stuff, and pay to go to the movies. You're paying for these services and these experiences to receive your content and information. Whereas in digital, it's all free. So media companies that have large audiences online and on digital rely heavily on advertising to fund it. And the digital advertising industry has evolved so much over the past 10 to 20 years at such a rapid rate, it's very difficult to be able to sort of keep up. So most people will be aware that, okay, if you have a website, you have an audience, the easiest way to monetize it is plugging Google ads, and there you go, just easy money, these ads that come through all the time. But the industry is so much more complex than that. And that's kind of the space that I sort of specialize in. And when it comes to programmatic, it's pretty much the automation of how that works. So the best way I can kind of describe it to people that are sort of not familiar with the industry, it's like, if you have any sense of how the stock market operates, the advertising industry has pretty much gone that same route. So we're kind of like the stock market, but for ad land. All right, where you've got data analysts, you've got all sorts of sophisticated technology that's happening within milliseconds and in real time. Some technologies plug in to others, and some of them don't work. Then you need to upskill your staff that would manage an ad campaign, but now they have to manage the tech behind it and become traders online in real time, sort of thing. So the whole dynamic has sort of changed, and that's kind of the focus that I specialize in. But particularly in South Africa, it's a very small niche. There's literally only a handful of companies in the country that are sort of in that position and that sort of benefit from my services. And me being, a startup as an individual, it's very difficult to get into that market with big corporates. And I'm pretty sure a lot of, fellow startup businesses and SMEs can definitely sort of share the strengths and the frustration in procurement processes when you try to get into the corporate space for corporate clients. So I'm very passionate about education and training, like sharing my knowledge and skills with people of like what I know. That's why I started Pragmattica as a consultancy. I mean, I've got 12 years experience in doing what I do, and I've witnessed a lot of mistakes that have been made along the way that could have been avoided if we knew better, right? So to be able to consult to other companies is to say, okay, well, what I've learned, what's taken me 12 years to understand how the space works, I'll be able to facilitate it in just a couple hours,
Yeah.
So I suppose I'm in the business of saving people time and money more so than making them money through monetization.
That's interesting.
Plugging those things.
That's interesting. That's sort of part of the gift economy, giving more than sort of a more care approach than a quick back approach. What's a typical client ask? Is it digital advertising, or does it vary from day to day? Do you get different companies, small, large? What does a day look like for you in that respect?
It's quite, it varies, and I'll be honest, I'm still kind of trying to discover like where the market hotspot is for me to sort of hone in on. So like I said, for B2B corporates in a very particular niche in the programmatic space, as I've just explained, they would sort of, businesses that are already fairly established, but they have maybe a bit of catching up to do when it comes to digital. Like they come from traditional media, and like the two industries are completely different. It's like chalk and cheese, so that kind of comes in where it's like, okay, well, they're generating X amount of revenue on average per month or per annum through these strategies and these technologies that they've plugged in. How can we increase that and improve that? So there's that service that I offer. For perhaps smaller companies, and as you said in the intro, when it comes to tech businesses, like the sort of the tech startups, I think I definitely attract a lot of sort of startup businesses and techies that love building tech, but don't necessarily know how to commercialize their tech and how to monetize it. So I meet a lot of like really skilled, talented entrepreneurs and developers and programmers and engineers, and people that have these amazing ideas, where you can see there's a need in the market for this and to develop it, but how do you actually monetize it? You can get funding to be able to fulfill it, but at the end of the day, a business needs to be able to generate profit. So how to generate profit. So I kind of facilitate strategies behind that and consult and would, sort of work on doing assessments and that. And then from the marketing side of things, the industry that I come from, because I've, been so connected to how the advertising industry and the marketing ecosystem works, particularly for digital, I kind of realized, probably about a year into starting my business, that there's a lot of value I can offer in, foundational basic aspects of marketing for businesses and organizations. And I've kind of used Pragmattica and the journey that I've had as a startup business on being able to build my brand, market, everything, like the learnings that I've learned firsthand in working for startup businesses that also needed to build a brand for themselves and make it known, and for my business. I got to practice what I preach, right? So I come with very practical knowledge and insights and advice that I can give to businesses and sort of facilitate implementing these sort of strategies that they want, from first-hand experience.
So you had a broad spectrum from startups to large corporates, and obviously with I know you've been working with quite a few companies that work out of WorkInProgress as well. And I, as general manager, it's my job to know the businesses or the business of all of my members. And sometimes you haven't been in the space for a week, and I hear that you're in India, or you're half the month up in Johannesburg, flying that 2-hour journey every week. Obviously that's changed now with COVID. But where else has your company taken you?
Gosh, yeah, I'd say I've definitely grown immensely since becoming an entrepreneur and a business owner. I mean, yeah, it's quite a lot for me to even process myself, and like how far I've come, and sometimes like listing, okay, year one, these are the accomplishments and achievements I've made, which sometimes kind of like, really, did I do all that sort of thing? But I think it definitely comes from when you're kind of a startup and you don't have funding and investment, and you don't really have a lot of money to splash around. You have to be extremely frugal, extremely strategic about how you're going to sort of survive with little resources, and grow a business. And I realized very early on that, you know, the best marketing tactic for me and my business, given the circumstances, is, you know, putting myself out there and doing a lot of public speaking and a lot of education and training. Not sort of hiding behind a website. You know, it's people want to see, people buy into Amanda more than they buy into Pragmattica. And I learned that quite early on. I mean, Amanda has a reputation for 12 years, but Pragmattica only has a reputation for maybe 2.5 years. So yeah, so you know, I've kind of started out, for a lot of people that don't know this about me, but many years ago I had a proper legitimate fear of public speaking. Like I would literally be on the verge of getting ill, you know, at the mere thought of having to put myself up there on stage and that. And when you start in your own business, it's like it's a do or die situation. You know, you have a lot of these fears and anxieties, but you can't, you know, you can't like let that get to you. So being on stage, speaking at a lot of conferences, doing a lot of workshops and training, it's taken me to the Netherlands. Before, I've, you know, been to Singapore every 6 months for the previous company I was working at. Learned a lot there in terms of the emerging economies around the world, and African economies, particularly on mobile and mobile technology. So yeah, my career and my industry has taken me to Singapore, India, Amsterdam, and Joburg a lot.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what would you say, you know, what drives you to do this? Is it the passion of the style of marketing that you do, or, you know, what is it that gets you to do this every single day?
Yeah, I think, look, I suppose, you know, a lot of people will probably say, I mean, advertising and marketing is, I mean, I might get in trouble for saying this sort of thing, but it's, if you really kind of drill it down, like fundamentally, it's all about, you know, convincing people to buy stuff and buy into things that they don't necessarily need or want. But that's, you know, the crux of what marketing and advertising is. And I suppose a lot of us that are in that industry have kind of got quite a cynical view of it. But there's a lot of good to be done, especially in terms of marketing campaigns, and, you know, seeing the pandemic of like how brands and companies sort of really coming out, that things are a lot more humanized. You know, there's a lot more empathy coming out in those sort of things. And for me, my drive and my passion is always to be able to better other people's businesses. I get a huge sense of reward. I find it extremely rewarding to be able to see, okay, my input resulted in them being able to generate more business for their revenue, that they're able to grow their company and hire more staff and increase, you know, employment, and independence and financial independence for people. So I kind of look at it like, for me, my core value, you know, that I hold quite highly is about equipping people to be independent and free, you know. And I find digital media, digital technologies, I mean, you look at lockdown, it's like for years, so many people have like wished that their bosses would allow them to work from home or give them more flexible working hours so they could spend more time with their families and that, but they, you know, would never allow it. Now pandemic sort of hits and it's like, okay, everyone's forced to work from home and that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, there we go. Now, you know, people finally getting into that. But a lot of companies and businesses don't necessarily know how to do it. So it helps if you come from a background where you've kind of been operating that way all the time. be able to sort of give back and show people, well, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, you know, not just for a few months since lockdown. So yeah, come speak to us and we'll help you on how to do that.
Yeah, well, I think your responsibility has been noticed, and I have a very long list, and I'll only read a few of them, but you have been recognized with a number of accolades. I'm just going to mention a few of them. The IAB 7 Wonder Women in SA Tech 2018, the IAB Bookmarks Awards Judge in 2019, the Africa Female Innovator of the Year 2019 finalist, and the most recent one is you made it to the semi-finals of the Accenture Rising Star Entrepreneur Awards for 2020. Well done, because that last one is huge. So to make it that far, you know, it's absolutely incredible for someone who's only been doing this by themselves for 2.5 years. So well done. What do accolades mean for you, if anything?
Yeah, I'd say that, it's, for me, it's like a very good marketing strategy for publicity to get my name out there, to sort of get recognition. And I suppose it's also really useful, you know, in terms of validation. I think a lot of women in particular, we kind of suffer from imposter syndrome, like we're like, are we really good enough, and that kind of thing. So when people nominate you for awards, or, you know, enter you into these things and, you know, ask you to submit, and all of a sudden you start getting recognized for these sort of things, then it's, yeah, it's useful. It's a useful confidence booster and sort of validation to say, okay, you know what, kick off this little imposter syndrome bug on my shoulder that's, you know, keeps, you know, saying, oh, you know, all that sort of doubting. Yeah. So I suppose I would say the accolades are like kind of on the one shoulder that's kind of like flicking the little imposter syndrome little thing off there, which kind of like helps me sort of balance. I would say that's, yeah, quite useful. But yeah, I certainly don't sort of let it get to my head. It's like instinctively kind of like, I didn't even win. Yeah, so I need the semi-finals. Okay, I made it to the finals, but you know, but it's, yeah. I'd say
to be nominated in a national competition, it's a fantastic feat. So really well done. I'm going to take it to questions on some people have written in the comment section on our Facebook page. This is from Lisa. Amanda, your comment on having a strong referral network is great. How do you build and maintain your network and guarantee yourself referrals?
Good question. Definitely relationship building is most important, you know. I think if it's up to value that you offer, for me, what I've done tremendously for myself personally in my career is I'm on LinkedIn more than I'm on any other social media platform. And so I've built up my LinkedIn profile, you know, for the past 12, 13 years. And I'm actively working on it, that sort of stuff. And, you know, I suppose your work has to speak for itself, you know. People that have met you and have engaged with you, and I always have this helping attitude, you know, throughout my career. It's like, okay, well, you know, if most of the referrals are like, I get phone calls or emails or connections and say, hey, so and so mentioned you can help us, you have knowledge in X, Y, and Z, and I'll be like, sure, pop me an email, happy to have a call for a few minutes and see if I can help you. And I think that's what's really worked, is just having that attitude of just trying to be helpful for people, and not first go in with the dynamic of, ooh, I can make money out of them sort of thing. You know, people see through that very quickly if you too sales pitchy to them, and then that sort of tarnishes your reputation, I guess. So I hope that answers Lisa's question.
Okay, thanks Lisa for the question. We have another one from Christoph. Being an entrepreneur yourself, when launching a startup, should people give up? and try something different at some point, or should they never give up in your view?
I suppose it depends what you're referring to as giving up, you know. It's a
I
unique
think
thing
maybe to
for
start something else or go back to a paid job with a corporate, or the safety net of a monthly salary, medical aid, all those lovely things that you can get from a company.
Oh man, how I miss
When you
those
start your own
perks.
thing.
Yeah, well, you know what? I suppose I can definitely tell my story. I mean, I won't lie to you. In the past 2.5 years, 2 years, several months now that I've been running my business, I can probably count 4 times where I was this close. I was like, that's it. I'm dead in the water. I update my CV, start going for interviews, start calling friends and contacts, and just very subtly kind of say, listen, things are not going well. I don't think I'm going to make it. You can only go so long with not making any money or not enough money to pay the bills at the end of the day. And so I've reached that point many times. And yeah,
I mean,
I was.
you and I discussed it yesterday when we were having a quick chat, and we were talking about entrepreneur life and how it isn't all roses, and you don't just always get those big contracts. And you actually mentioned yesterday that I think it was at the beginning of this year you didn't actually have any clients. And
No,
then,
I mean, there were contracts. Yeah, there were contracts that I worked on. I mean, when you're a business owner and you're in the service industry, like it's incremental, right? You got to make a sale. It's all these things are sort of short-lived. Okay, I have a contract for 3 months, a contract for 6 months. Here, I have a workshop gig that pays off once ad hoc here and there. And there's these sort of cycles when it comes to sort of business. When I'm in the B2B industry, so when it comes to December holidays, businesses close down, schools close down, everyone's in holiday mode. There's like a good solid 2 to 3 months of like no major income coming in. And as a startup, entrepreneur, I know I have to work on implementing consistent revenue models, whether it's productizing my services in some way and generating passive incomes. But those things take time to build and establish, so that you're still solid for the dry months when you're not getting the big client contacts and works coming in. And yeah, like just before lockdown, I had a really great week in Joburg. Some great meetings there, and I was supposed to go to Joburg the week of lockdown, and everything, lockdown happens, like all that work that I was, business development work that I was doing, like just dead. The businesses just pulled up the handbrakes and they're like, that's it. No, we're not going to do that. And I was like, shit. Okay, I was kind of banking on this. It looked like a solid thing coming in. That I knew I was going to get that contract, that work was going to, help me revenue wise for like 2 months or something.
So you didn't get the contract?
No, it didn't work out. Because, I think they had to go through retrenchments and stuff. And, things had affected them. So, that's.
So have you found that, sorry, just during, obviously, I have to mention the big L word, the lockdown. Have you had more, companies come to you saying we need to be online more, we need your expertise on what to do? We've normally just been in magazines or above the line advertising. What can you do to help us during lockdown to keep our businesses going? Has that happened to you at all?
It didn't necessarily, because like I'll put it to you this way, like last year I was like on a plane more than I was on land at home. I was flying up and down, I was doing workshops, I had a contract, I was doing 2 or 3 workshops every month. I was overseas doing conferences, all that sort of stuff. So while I'm doing all that work, I'm not necessarily doing business development work in order to secure future clients and that, because I'm busy with the work that I'm doing at the moment. And so the beginning of lockdown was like, okay, now we're stuck. Now I have all this free time on my hands because I don't have any clients to service at the time. Let me work on my marketing strategy, right? Like, people don't know what value you can offer them if you don't make it known. And that's why marketing is so important. So if you don't put yourself out there and get your message out there, then no one's going to know. So I kind of used the opportunity to say, okay, well, while I've got time on my hands, and, you know, generally my clientele was corporate companies, like established businesses, you know, that can afford my services. But, you know, there's so many startups and SMEs and individuals that have like lost their jobs, lost revenues, and they desperately need help on just basic fundamentals. So again, that was me of like, how can I be helpful, as opposed to, you know, woe is me, things are not like working out for my business. And so I started, you know, I put together a digital marketing tips and tactics webinar for free for people to attend. And, you know, pretty much just an hour of me giving advice to people, you know, what you can do to promote yourself if you don't have any funding or advertising to do that. And it was
that sounds amazing. I'd love to get a recording of that. I'd love to get a recording of that, and we'll share it hopefully on our Facebook page. Everyone, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's super raw. I'd love it if it could get edited, so the ums and the ahs and whatever. I was so nervous because it was the first time I'd done it. But, you know, it's like practice what you preach, you know. If you're telling people, put yourself out there, get on video, all these things, like, you got to be able to show that you're doing that to encourage other people to do it. So I'll share the link with you. I put it on YouTube. I'm just too shy and embarrassed by like the quality of how it's all sort of done.
That's fine. I'm sure
promote it. Yeah, but again, you know, coming back to Lisa's question in the beginning, where it's like the power of referrals and how it worked. For me, it was just having that helpful attitude. Was like, I was there. I'm like, this is where I feel I can help others. And in return, the attention that got on me, I had several individuals and businesses contact me asking me for advice and that. And then all of a sudden, you know, here comes the opportunities of business again. So within less than 2 weeks of me doing that, I got 2 new clients, and I got my first international client that signed me up. And I think this was also the beauty about the lockdown, was pre-lockdown and pre-COVID pandemic, it was like always logistics. Oh, okay, how do I fly overseas to be able to do workshops and training for these corporate companies? Or I have to go to Durban and Joburg, you know, to give training for these companies. Where now it's almost like, while our borders have been physically shut down, that's preventing you from traveling, digitally our borders are now more open than ever, you know. So for me, like, I always had this sort of vision where within a few years of me, like within 5 years of Pragmattica, you know, I want to be international and established all over the place, you know, the big ambitions and like, you know, the stars in the eyes kind of thing. And it's almost like it's happening sooner, you know, because leveraging on digital technologies, it just allows you to do that. So now I can actually do 10 times more workshops and training and service 10 times more clients, because we're doing it digitally, as opposed to me flying up and in a whole week I can only service that one client.
That was going to be a point of mine, is obviously you were traveling up to Johannesburg to do a workshop or to have a meeting. It all seems quite unnecessary now. You know, now that we can do it, we can run a successful business by having an online call, whether it's WebEx or Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Google Hangouts. You know, it seems so unnecessary a bit bizarre now. And but you know, everyone has seemed to have managed and adapted to it so easily and so quickly. Do you think it would ever go back? You know, as soon as we can, as soon as we do open up our borders, you know, do you see yourself traveling to Joburg once a week, or are you quite stuck in, you know, set in your ways now of having meetings one-on-one, or having a board meeting with other people on a computer?
No, not at all. I mean, I put the scenario, it's like, how does it feel for you when you actually get to see your family and loved ones in person and you're in the same room together, as opposed to, you know, being in different locations and only seeing them on screen? There is definitely a difference, and there is definitely a difference in the types of conversations that are had versus in person and versus digital remote, right? So people are always going to have preferences, but I would say the difference now is that you're not using distance as an excuse anymore to not be able to do business and to not engage. So I kind of envision and I see things being a lot more of a hybrid approach, you know, whereas before the conversations were, okay, we have to do these workshops and training, and it was always about, okay, how do we get our staff from our Durban or our Cape Town branch to fly up, and that everyone's together in Joburg, you know, as a hub there, or how do we get to equip our team in Singapore versus our team in London, kind of thing, where you can have the hybrid approach. It doesn't need to be put off anymore. I think that's what's really worked and changed. Yeah.
For the better, which is fantastic. I have a question here from Carly, who's listening, watching from Johannesburg. Hi, Carly. How have you raised funding for your business?
I haven't raised any. So
okay.
I've bootstrapped everything. I have had zero funding. I've done everything on zero budget. So yeah, that's my short answer. I'm a service-based industry. As long as I have a decent phone, internet connection, and, you know, reliable software and tech, I don't need. I wouldn't advise people to go after funding first. You know, first focus on to make money. We'll see. The funding in terms of investment and getting money, that's not what I'm looking for.
Okay. All right. I have another question from Chris in Hout Bay. Would you move away from being an entrepreneur and ever work for a corporate again? I'm guessing no, but let's hear your answer.
I mean, I came close. I really came close. I mean, I've got nothing against it. It's I suppose it sort of depends. I just kind of find in my experience with corporates is they're very, very set in their ways. And certain systems and processes and protocols that you have to adhere by, I find it stifles me. I don't feel like I grow fast enough within large corporates. Now, I'll happily challenge corporates or have them challenge me on that sort of thing. But I don't know. I mean, I'll never say never, but I have been approached by one or two corporates that were interested in buying me out, to sort of absorb me, you know, with big ad agency companies that were like, okay, well, how much will it cost to have you come in? And then they were asking me the question, like, how set are you on, you know, running your business and keeping it all to yourself, kind of thing? And I was like,
trying to steal you away from work in progress. How dare they? They can't have you. I won't let them. And on that, you know, you've been here for 2 years. What's made you stay? It can't just be the amazing internet or the delicious coffee. You know, what is it that makes you come to work out of work in progress every day?
I would definitely say the relationship building. I love like being at the hub. I mean, there's so many dynamic businesses that are based here. So you kind of get to like be at the forefront. Like I always feel like I have my finger on the pulse when it comes to technology and innovation. There's a really great vibe here when it comes to that. And also the referrals, the business referrals I've gotten is predominantly from being in the workspace here. If I wasn't based here in the workspace, I wouldn't have met certain people and they wouldn't have known me about my services and referred on business. I'd say about 90% of the business that I've gotten, maybe even 95% of the business and clients I've gotten has been out of referrals. And a big portion of that has been, in this workspace. Yeah.
And thank you. That's good to know. The on a personal note, being an entrepreneur is not easy. I see it every day. With the 114 members that we have here, how do you deal with things like burnout and stress and anxiety and, like you say, imposter syndrome, which I see too often? How do you deal with that?
I could say the really bad answer, like coffee and wine. Coffee in the day just to keep you alive, and in the night, like all the stress, just like unwind. But no, don't become alcoholics, kids.
You can be honest.
There's obviously like having sort of a balanced lifestyle, and again, there's so many things that people can talk about, like meditate, read, get good sleep, and all that kind of stuff. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's a lot easier said than done. I think one of the things I've learned a lot, like right at the beginning, you were like, how do I have time for all of this? And then I joked, my caffeine, I just go all the way through. I have burned out a couple times in my career, and I did burn out within my first year of starting my business. It was brutal.
Wow.
I mean, it was rough. I mean, especially the traveling, right? It's like you go and you travel, you're there for such a short space of time, so you're cramming in as much as possible. And I leave it to the weekends to relax and chill and catch up on sleep. It doesn't work. You can never catch up on sleep. So one of the things that I've learned a lot recently of late is, instead of trying to figure out how to manage my time, although that's really critical, but rather prioritize managing my focus. So if you just really solid on your priorities and what you need to focus on, that kind of just makes it a lot easier to sort of manage your time accordingly and prevent yourself from going through that burnout phase. Again, myself, I always have like this helpful attitude. People come to me and, hey, can you help us with that? Can you, do this? I'm like, yes, I can do it all. I can help out for a lot of it all, like all of it. But now I started asking myself, not if I can do it, because the answer is mostly yes, and that leads to the burnout. But now I've started asking myself, should I be doing it instead?
Okay.
And that just kind of recalibrates it. Yeah. So I ask myself the question, should I do it? And manage my focus first, and then the time second. Yeah.
Interesting. We're going to wrap up shortly, but I just have a couple more questions. Apart from your phone, your computer, what other piece of tech can you not live without?
Might be a bit counterintuitive what I just said, but my watch, all right, managing time. I have to know what time it is. Time is precious, and and also, I think it's such a huge sign of respect if you are respectful of other people's time and your time. And that, sometimes you don't get too carried away in sort of things. So I would say my watch.
Okay. Other than WhatsApp and social media, what apps do you probably use the most, do you find?
So for business, I would, well, because I pretty much do that most of the time. Adobe Scanner, which is a free app. I do like a lot of doodles, like, you know, when you have to scan documents and contracts and that, you don't need a big scanner printer. Just got the free mobile app, take photos. I have a whiteboard in my office at home, and I do a lot of brainstorming sessions and doodles on there. Literally just take a photo on like whiteboard, and it just downloads it all to PDF, so I can save things on file digitally. It's super useful.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to download that one because I'm forever writing down notes and losing pieces of paper.
And then you kind of lose it. You've got these papers like all over the place. Like, where's that book? What page? You know? Yeah. Very cool.
Okay, last question, and it's quite an important one for everyone listening, all you startups that are watching at the moment. What advice would you give for people who are thinking about starting their own company? In a short snippet, what would your top tips? What would you have known or wish someone had told you at the very, very beginning when you started Pragmattica?
There's so much to say, but like when it's so broad, gosh, I've got so much that I could say and tell. I would say start small while thinking big, right? Like,
good.
yes, have the big drive, the big ambition, so that you know what you're working towards and what's driving you, and you know, like the big success. But started small, and now more than ever before, in a day and an age where, you know, life and the world just changes in an instant like that, and no one sees it coming. If you are small and agile, like you can get through just about anything and everything. Again, the webinar and a lot of the workshops I've been giving in terms of sort of consulting and training in that is, gone are the days of, you know, big corporates like the big fish eating the little fish, like the startups and the SMEs, and like absorbing them. You know, it's like, oh, okay, big corporate comes in and says, how much for your business? And we'll just absorb you in, you know, and their monopoly grows bigger. Whereas now it's all about more the fast fish versus the slower fish, you know, the ones that are more agile and adaptable to change their business strategies, to pivot in that quicker, are the ones that are going to survive and outlive, you know, the bigger ones.
Fantastic.
So
Amanda, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Start
You're
small,
welcome.
think big. Great advice. Thank you. I've absolutely loved the last 52 minutes with you. And if anyone would like to speak to Amanda or ask any more questions in a private way, then you can message us on Facebook, or you can follow Amanda on Facebook. And I think you've got an Instagram page as well, Amanda, if you want to contact her through that portal, or if you have any information that you'd like to share with Amanda, or you'd like to be a client of Amanda, then, you know, please do get in contact. She's going to get very busy, I sense.
It's growing.
Webinar, we do have CEO of Dorp and Folkscon Shoes, Nick Dreyer, who will be chatting with us next Wednesday at 1 p.m. live from our Facebook page. So I hope to see you there. Guys, thank you so much for joining, and see you next week. Thanks so much.
Cool.